I did an hours assessment. And I said, okay, I have 168 hours in a week. Where could I carve out a little section of time to write? And I wrote down everything I was spending my time with. And after I wrote down all of my hours in a very conservative way, there were only 3.5 hours left in the entire week. Yeah. And so I scheduled on my calendar a 3.5 hour time block and said writing. Well, of course, right after I blocked out that time, a friend called and said, hey, you know, we're going out to lunch and we're gonna let the kids play in the park and, you know, we really want you to come. And I felt so foolish to tell her I've blocked out this time to write, because at that point in my life, I wasn't what I would consider a real writer, you know? But I kept the appointment, and that first day, I decided to write part of my testimony. And part of my story is that in my 20s, I felt like a throwaway person, so I acted like a throwaway person, and wound up getting pregnant and having an abortion. And it was the most devastating decision that I'd ever made. And there was this little newsletter that asked me to write my story, so that first 3.5 hour block of time, with my hands shaking and tears running down my face, I wrote that part of my story and sent it off to the newsletter, and never really heard anything. I knew it got published. They sent me a copy, but that was that. Well, 16 years later, I became an author, and I was at a book signing, I was at a speaking engagement, and there were two women that came through my book line. And when they got up to me, they introduced themselves and they held out a picture of a 15-year-old boy. And they said, this boy is alive today because of something that you wrote many years ago. They said, you wrote about your abortion. And the girl said that her daddy was a preacher, and she wound up getting pregnant. And he told her that she needed to have an abortion so that, you know, that kind of shame wouldn't come on their family. And I don't judge him for that. I know that fear. I know that just the deception that Satan can wrap in that. So I don't fault him, but I am so thankful that family got a hold of the article, and because of this little article that I had written, they made a different decision, and now they have this beautiful, beautiful, amazing teenage boy in their lives as a result. And I think back to that day where I wrote that first article. And, you know, sometimes God says, this is an assignment and I want you to do it. And we know it, you know, whether it's to paint or to speak or to do some kind of sport or to make a cake and carry it to the friend down the street, or it can be big, it can be small, whatever it is. I call it your soul thing. And I think all of us have some kind of sense in us that God has an assignment for us. And we won't ever find time for it. We won't ever make time for it. We've got to carve out that time in the 168 hours we've been entrusted to each week. And it's not a selfish thing, because I always add at the end, my soul thing, I always say, so that I can bless whom. And so for me to carve out 3.5 hours worth of writing, times all these years later, it's added up to 17 books and a ministry that I love.